Welcome to the Scariest Things podcast, episode 58.
Wow.
Tonight we are talking about medical malpractice. But more importantly, we are talking about medical malpractice, but tonight we are also joined by the Dean of the horror scene,
I love
Jeff
that.
Dean.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
Wow, it feels like it was just,
Yesterday.
half an hour ago.
Time flies.
So, Eric, any medical malpractice in your background? I don't want to get into any HIPAA violations, but anything gone wrong?
Emergency appendectomies.
Wrong things amputated.
Operating on the neighborhood cats.
I told you to amputate my right finger. Nothing?
No,
Anything?
No, I got nothing. What about you, Mike?
No. Save for Kaiser Permanente giving me probably way too much Vicodin.
Nice.
I don't know if that qualifies as medical malpractice, but
Yeah.
every time my back goes cattywampus, I swear to God, they give me, which I suppose is horrifying in and of itself. They give me
I remember when you
way too much Vicodin. And I'm like, I can probably take like one tablet of Vicodin. I don't need 120 tablets of Vicodin.
That's when you sell it. Not that I'm condoning that, but I'm just saying that's what,
Yes.
that's what somebody with maybe less scruples would
Yes,
do.
they would sell that Vicodin. And
Dr.
we
Feelgood.
wonder why there's an opioid crisis in America.
Yes, because doctors are quick to hand that out.
Yes.
Right?
So, I think one thing that we forgot to ask Jeff in our last podcast was,
What was that?
well, what's of the subgenres? What is your wheelhouse?
Your
Where
go-to.
Where do you go for your favorite?
Do
Do
you
you
go
have a
to-
favorite subtype?
Gore, cannibals,
I
zombies,
love monster movies. Like
old-timey-
werewolves,
Okay.
aliens, but I love all subgenres of horror. I'm a huge horror geek, as you guys know, and I just love the whole genre. I love all from the beginning, the silent films, all the way to the modern films. But one thing I do miss now is the monster movie,
Yep.
which were extremely, prevalent in the 1980s, but and even before that. But now, I think because a lot of horror films don't have the huge budgets.
Right.
Yeah.
Some of the studio films do, but a lot of them don't.
So you're clearly
So they don't-
discounting Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Well, but there have been some fun ones like Grabbers. I think it was
Yeah.
fun.
Grabbers was
Splinter was fun.
Critters.
really good. I did like the movie you talked about a couple of weeks ago, Late Phases.
Yes.
Had some
Oh, yeah.
practical werewolves in that.
Of the werewolves, since we did just talk about werewolves just not too long ago, what is your go-to werewolf film? Being a monster movie
Well,
fan.
my favorite is American Wolf in London.
Sure.
Yeah, I think
I'm
so.
also a fan of the Curse of the Werewolf, which is the Hammer film with Oliver Reed.
Yes.
Which is-
we'll
which
be
is
talking a
pretty
little bit
good.
about Oliver Reed later this evening.
I love Oliver Reed.
All right.
Who doesn't love Oliver Reed? He's a hoot.
And speaking of Hammer, because we just talked about Hammer on the last episode too. Curse of the Werewolf. That is, and you announced that a lot of the Hammer collection is going to be coming soon to DVD. Curse of the Werewolf is a hell of a hard movie to find.
Yeah.
Because it's just hard to find because it's a Hammer film, but secondly, they package it up in these crazy collections of stuff, and so you have to know which collection of crazy crap to look for.
It is available on, because that's one of the Hammer films that's under Universal's. So
Okay.
Universal put out their Hammer horror collection. It's got 8 movies on it.
Right.
And they put that out a couple of years ago. So but you have to buy the whole collection.
Yeah.
So you can't just pick the movie out. I mean, maybe if you have a region-free player, you can
Right.
buy an English DVD or Blu-ray of it.
So how's the transformation in Curse of the Werewolf?
It's good.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's not
Is it Lon Chaney-esque?
sort of,
Yeah.
but I love the design, the way he looks. It's very similar to kind of Henry Hull's look in Werewolf of London.
Yes.
Not so much like the whole face is covered in hair.
No. And he's a little got a little fluff around him.
Yeah,
and
it's
kind
like
of-
you can actually see his face. It's not completely buried under a lot of prosthetics or fur.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he's got like, you can actually see the features of his nose and eyes and everything.
But more wolfiness than where.
But we're not talking about wolves. Today.
We're gonna move on.
we're
Yeah,
talking- we're
he's
talking
a wolf
about-
man, not a werewolf, right? Because he walks on two legs.
Although lycanthropy is a definite and medically recognized condition,
Yeah.
right?
And you guys wanted to shorten this episode, and here we are on a tangent. So
Now it is. It's all of a sudden longer.
How'd that happen? So
So what qualifies, Eric, help us out. What qualifies as medical malpractice? You had some
Yeah.
very, very definite rules and ideas. I'm pretty sure I ignored all of them.
okay, well, I think one of the things that I wanted to do was to try and separate out the real edge, the mad scientist kind of stuff
Yes.
out to some degree, because I think that's its own kind of category. We've talked about mad scientist movies in the past, so
Right.
some things like Frankenstein and The Fly,
Sure.
and Reanimator maybe as on
Right.
the edge of that.
Okay. Okay.
So those were some that I thought it's like, okay, at least from my standpoint, I was going to try and avoid that.
Right.
The-
Less experimentation, more Hippocratic Oath.
Yes, and so if the bulk of the movie takes place in the hospital, it counts. If
Done.
there is a medical doctor with a title doctor somebody, okay, I think I'm willing to roll with it.
Done. Check.
If it's talking about a disease or some sort of a malady that requires a doctor's attention and the medical part of this, so cabin fever I say is out. But if it's something like Andromeda strain or coma or those kinds of things, those could count. That's a little bit more science fiction horror.
I don't want to preempt anyone, but I'm going to park coma in the horror or not category.
Aha. Okay, interesting. And I think if surgery is involved, that's definitely part of this, because I think the most visceral aspect of the we'll call it the medical malpractice horror,
Sure.
is the toe curling experience of watching somebody get cut up with a scalpel. I think
So,
that is
so Faces of Death 6 does not count, or does count.
well.
Doesn't?
Is that a
Does.
movie?
That's
Is that just like
no.
a greatest hits? It's like a greatest hits
Greatest autopsies.
compilation.
I'm not going to go there.
Okay. Man,
Wannabe snuff films do not count. I think, but I think that
nothing
we may
wannabe
be
about
crossing the
that.
bridge into some, like, if you wanted to do something torture porn-ish, some of these kinds of things medical horror sort of lends itself that way.
Yeah.
But so those were sort of my rough distinctions that I was
Well,
trying to
and
make.
medical horror. I mean, medical horror is definitely a close cousin. It's in this. It's in the. It's down the street at the end of the cul-de-sac to the gore genre, because
Yes.
I mean it definitely lends itself to lots and lots of gore,
Serious nastiness.
serious nastiness, lots of scalpels, lots of devices, lots of bodies being pulled from limb to limb.
Yeah, and
That is
so-
definitely where medical malpractice rests in the horror genre.
Initially, I thought when you suggested this, I thought this was going to be tough, because that there are some of them.
I mean, it is and it isn't. Yeah.
And then I realized no, there are plenty, and I found a number of good ones, and there's some that I wish I could have included on my list. Maybe you guys put them on there. We'll see.
Dr. Butcher, MD.
Dr. Giggles, who's got Dr. Giggles?
Dr. Butcher, MD.
Oh, Dr. Butcher, MD. Oh my God, yeah, we talked about that.
Medical deviant.
Yes.
Deviate.
And
Medical deviate.
what were some of the other ones that I think that like with our 1970s discussion?
Yes.
I figured that we've talked about some films quite a bit, and they don't need necessarily to get rehashed at this time, but we might as well make mention of them because they're sort of landmark movies. I think Eyes Without a Face is one that I think is one of the all-time greats.
Yep.
For the removing the face of captured girls so that he could replace his
The
daughter's
face of his daughter who was in
Yeah.
a car crash.
Fantastic. We've talked about that a bunch.
And lots of dog experimentation.
Yeah, poor dogs. We also, I think, Get Out
Yeah.
is one where there's certainly the surgical procedure in that.
So
Spoiler alert.
Get Out's off the list? Oh, no.
We're just like, we talked about this. We talked about it. Also, I think I ruled out psychological asylum type things because I think that's its own category. I think I want to save that one for later.
The Nut House.
Yeah.
The Booby Hatch.
The asylums.
Nothing not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, because as we talked about a couple weeks ago,
In episode 55.
sometimes you just need to talk to your therapist.
Yes.
You need to deal with your fears.
Sometimes it might not be timely.
Yeah.
When the call is coming from inside your house,
Yeah.
you might not have time to call the psychotherapist. But if you do have time, make that call.
Yeah.
All right, let's let our guest go first
Yes.
in his our collective
Terrible trio.
terrifying trio. What do you have, Jeff?
Alrighty, my first selection tonight is from 2012, American Mary.
Oh,
Did I take one of...
collide. But you know what? I'm always prepared.
Alrighty.
Eric is.
Yeah, American Mary, written and directed by Jen and Sylvia Soska, two Canadians, female directors. And this is, believe their second film after Dead Hooker in a Trunk. Great title. American Mary is basically the story of Mary Mason, who's a medical student who finds herself in desperate need of cash. And so she finds her way into the underground world of basically black market surgeries or body modification.
She's a chop shop doc.
Yeah, she's at like she's at a bar. An incident happens where I believe a patron gets his like face or mouth kind of gnarlily ripped up or something like that.
I think the bar owner and his thugs beat the shit out of him.
Yeah, and then the owners are like, I need someone to fix this guy up, but we need to keep it off the record. She does it. She does a good job.
But she's not harvesting organs.
She's not harvesting organs.
She's just doing kind of off the books.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Medical-
she does
medical treatment.
So she does this. The word gets out that she does good work, and then people are like, "Oh, can you do this for me?
People
Can
from
you
the
do
strip
that?"
club,
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah. So, and it's basically just kind of about her journey, about how she starts doing this, and basically how her life kind of begins to spiral out of control because of some of the characters she starts dealing with. This movie combines, horror, dark comedy, and some pretty gnarly gore in it as well. And some of the modifications that she does is extremely disturbing but highly entertaining.
Yes.
Like there's one character who wants to kind of be turned into Betty Boop.
Yeah.
There's another woman.
Convincingly so.
Yeah, and then there's another woman who basically wants to become like a Barbie doll, wants to have basically all her features kind of smoothed out and be anatomically correct like a Barbie doll. So things are sewn up,
No more
chopped
nipples.
off. Yeah. And then there are two characters played by the directors, the Soska sisters, who wish to be joined together because they're twins.
Yeah.
And those are just some of the marvelous things you're going to be subjected to if you want to watch this movie. I really enjoy this movie. I think it's kind of held together by the performance of Catherine Isabel, who is probably most famous for playing Ginger in Ginger Snaps. I think this is kind of like a very kind of bold and extremely unique and not for everyone type of movie. I mean,
Sure.
not
I think a big caution actually out there to fans who are who have difficulty with rape scenes.
yeah.
There's a fairly brutal rape scene, but and in one of the best rape revenge moments, Mary gets her revenge
Yeah.
in a very satisfying way.
Especially in like for people who don't like torture. as well.
Yes.
We're not doing a rape revenge podcast.
Yeah, so I mean, I do think the movie, it's hard to watch, but I do think it's fairly, well done for the subject matter.
Now, when you say body modification, is it at all like the D. Snyder joint Strangeland? Like where they get into that kind of body modification?
This is like, I mean, everything she does is pretty extreme.
Okay, because I mean there was
in
some
this.
sort of extreme stuff in Strangeland.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with what the D. Snyder one thing had, but I think there are.
You do know who D. Snyder is, though.
Yeah, well, we actually went on at length about D. Snyder with our guest Ben Goldsmith, who
Save it for the 80s hard rock podcast.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
which we will get to.
So yeah,
Black Rose,
but
Trick
things
or
like
Treat.
there are some, and they go ahead and show these modifications too. It's shocking.
Huh?
Yeah, but I think it's a fun.
Yeah.
American Mary.
Yeah, it's very twisted, but I do think it's extremely entertaining.
It is. It is grisly and fun and hard to watch. All things that Jeff said. Yes. Agreed.
All right.
Sorry, I stole your choice.
That's
Eric.
okay. I got backups. We'll see if we stumble into each other again.
All right. Well, you don't have this one. I'm going right to the top. Right to the top for my number 3. This is the Portland, Oregon filmed movie Dr. Giggles from 1992.
Dr. Giggles was filmed in Portland.
Filmed all in Portland. A good portion of it, a really, really good chunk, because it does kind of a teen slashery sort of vibe, is filmed at Oaks Bottom, which is not too far from here.
Yeah, we're about a 5-minute drive from here.
I don't know where the house is. The house that is the house where the primary protagonist lives, played by Holly Marie Combs. Her character's name is Jennifer Campbell.
From Charmed?
Yeah, that Holly Marie Combs. Yeah, it wasn't quite her first film, although it was early on in her film career. She's quite young and looks quite young in the film. But I'm pretty sure the house is either in Ladd's Edition or it might be in Irvington, because I swear to God I've seen the house before. So for those of you that are in Portland and you are familiar with Dr. Giggles, and you can tell us where that house is, we would love to know. But the film, the 1992 film, involves Portland as the town of Moore High.
Appropriately named.
Moore High. It involves the patients of Dr. Evan Rendell keep disappearing. And it turns out that Evan Rendell, the doctor, his wife is dying of a heart condition, and he is going out and nabbing people to try to be the first person to create a heart transplant, a full heart transplant, to save his loving wife, who he is enamored with. And his son, Evan's son, is watching all of this as the mother dies, and the father and the son share one thing in common, and that is their love of laughter.
Does he use nitrous?
No, there's no nitrous. There's no nitrous. No, they both inherently have this hyper maniacal laugh. Long story short, the townspeople eventually corner Dr. Rendell. They stone him to death. They burn part of the house down, and Evan Jr. Disappears forever and ever to not be seen again. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is Evan Jr. becomes Dr. Giggles many, many years later, played by Larry Drake, formerly of
LA
Law fame. But the thing that's funny is he's not actually a doctor. He has been locked away in a psychiatric ward for many, 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 many moons. And lo and behold, he busts out of the nut house and decides to take revenge once again on the people of Moore High, California. It is set in Northern California, even though it's all in Oregon or all in Portland. But he decides to descend on the people of Moorhigh, California. The film is filled with tons of Freddy Krueger-esque one-liners.
Okay, it's fantastic.
It is puntastic.
Yeah, I'm sure they really wanted to start a new franchise with this.
I
love Larry Drake. I think he's the best part of this
He's great.
movie. He's like so damn entertaining. Right. Every time he kills somebody, he has this fantastic giggle and a one-liner and stuff. But
he is great. And there are, if you are at all a horror fan or a gore fan, there are two scenes in the film. One involves a device going up a nose, which is so terrifying. The other involves a flashback scene where young Evan Jr. is hidden. I will. Spoiler alert. He is hidden in the body of the mother, and he has to cut his way out of the body of his mother.
Larry Drake's not a small man either.
Well, this was Evan Jr. as a little boy, and it's the little boy who cuts his way out of the mother, absolutely covered in blood, and crawls out of her torso. That both of those scenes together are really, 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 really crazy gory. But the thing that's great about the film, it hits on every single possible trope: the good cop, the bad cop, the caring dad, the slutty stepmom, the black cop, the white cop, it just hits on all the teen tropes. It's like note for note, beat for beat, hits on all of them.
What year was Dr. Giggles?
1992.
Yeah, and
I think it came out about 7 years too late.
Yeah, I think because
No, you're right. You're right.
It has a very 80s franchise feel. Like we need to hit these beats, and we're trying to develop a new cinema boogeyman.
Yeah, and I think that's we
late.
ran into this when we were doing the Mount Rush horror. When we were trying to establish the iconic images or who was going to be the statues on the carvings on the mountain.
And for the record, Eric was all about Dr. Giggles, and we said no.
Yeah,
Dr.
You
Giggles
shut that
does
down,
not
and
belong.
I've been pissed ever since. No, but I think that the 80s in particular was there was an emphasis on the antagonist, the villains. That was your Freddy's, Jason's, Michael's.
Yeah.
Pinhead, all those iconic characters, and that kind of wore itself out, kind of like in the 90s when we had to shift to some of the shaky cam stuff and the ghost stories, and now the sort of the art house horror where it's really character driven, protagonist focused, as opposed to coming up with a franchise villain.
This was definitely sort of a last gasp, and Jeff, to your point, Variety magazine actually said that had they done a little bit more care in scripting and less cheap yaks, it would have resulted in a viable new paranoid horror myth. But they leaned more on what they knew. The other thing that was interesting too is this was the one of the first, if not the first, Dark Horse imprint. So Mike Richardson from Dark Horse Comics, here also located in Portland. This was their, I think it was their first film imprint, and right after he did this, he did The Mask with Jim Carrey,
right? Another Dark Horse,
which of course like took off like gangbusters. So this was really the first of that sort of whole Dark Horse film universe. Yeah. Obviously, they have a whole comic book universe.
And we should be getting another Dark Horse one here coming soon. Hellboy's coming out.
Is it this week or next week? Or
I don't know. I think
relatively soon.
Yeah, I think they kind of want to stay out of Avengers Endgame. That whole juggernaut.
Sure.
But I think that's we're getting close.
All right. So what do you got? Number 3.
My number 3, I'm going back to 1971. This was one that I thought about using for my the 1970s podcast. This is The Abominable Dr. Phibes.
Oh, yes. There it is.
With the fabulous...
Not 1921. 1971.
71. So this, I think, one of Price's most iconic roles. I think that one of the things about this is the marketing campaign was focused on the skeletal mask that you see on the covers. He really isn't in that for very long in this movie, but he's a mute who speaks through an electric plug through his neck into a phonograph, and I think this is supposedly taking place in the early 1930s, and it is full on, but at the same time, it is 1 foot camped in the 1930s, 1 foot camped in the 1970s, and so there's this kind of groovy, funky vibe to it. The psychedelic kind of acid washed pastiche over this whole thing. So there's lots of bright colors. There's some Art Deco that predates Suspiria in its look. Suspiria did it better, but Dr. Phibes has a great look about it. And it complete with some kind of bizarro things, like he has a whole series of automaton bandmates called Dr. Phibes Clockwork Wizards, and so that the movie opens up and he's doing a sort of a Phantom of the Opera.
Are they animatronic?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like the animatronic bears at Disneyland.
Yeah, and they're these little, and they play kind of this brass band thing while he's doing some toccata in fugue kind of thing on the pipe organ, and the pipe organ's got all these like this translucent plastic kind of glow in the dark pink stuff going on. But the core of the story is that he is taking revenge on the 9 medical practitioners that allowed his wife to die on the operating table. And he is using the 9 biblical plagues to take out all of the doctors who did him wrong. Because it was believed that he had died when they tried to inform him of the death of his wife, crashed his car and died in a car wreck. But he's,
So Seven really was a ripoff.
Yeah. This is a totally different feel than Seven. But there are some brilliant, I particularly like the Plague of Frogs. Is done, and I think we talked about a masquerade in my last discussion. But there's another masquerade. The 70s was all about masquerade parties, apparently. And he affixes this wonderful frog mask on one of the doctors at a party, and it has this automatic constriction thing where the mask gets tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter until it crushes his head. And it's in this frog mask, and all of a sudden you hear this crunch, and then all of a sudden the blood oozes out from the bottom of the mask. It's wonderful.
My favorite murder in it is the bloodletting scene.
Yes.
Where he goes in there and fills all the jars up.
Oh,
it's
right,
it's completely
yeah.
ludicrous,
Yeah.
but it's just hilarious.
Right.
Because there's a huge campiness to this film,
Yes.
which is because Price, because he has very little dialogue, it's all his facial expressions,
But
which
you
are
can
just
see
fantastic.
his throat, his Adam's apple is moving.
Yeah,
As if
yeah.
he is speaking, and because he's apparently created this amazing electronic voice through a phonograph.
I thought you were going to do your transatlantic voice there.
This is Vincent Price. No, I can't do a Vincent Price. I would shame myself. But it is as Jeff said, very campy.
When was the last time you watched it, though? Did you watch it recently?
2 nights ago.
Okay, so you have watched it recently.
Yeah. So
And-
this was as a refresh. I had a lot of fun with it.
Okay,
I
all right.
think it is. It's
Because horror is not just about scares. Sometimes it's about having fun.
yeah, and and the clever as much as I will poo-poo things like Final Destination, and it's it's too clever for its own sake.
Right.
I cut Mr. Price a lot of slack.
Oh,
as
hell
far as,
yeah.
It's like his concoction to come up with a locust trap is fairly preposterous.
Have you seen the
I loved
sequel?
it. What's that?
Have you seen the sequel?
I have
Dr.
not seen the sequel.
Phibes rises again.
Rising, yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun too.
Okay. Yeah, I think the other thing that I enjoy is that the cops in this thing are 100% inept. They are always late. They are always guessing wrong. They try and show up in force, and it's like, we've got police at every single door of this thing. There's no way he can get past us, and he gets past them real easily. And then there's this, there's a death by a unicorn catapult thing that I don't understand. I don't know which of the plagues the unicorn death comes from. It's like, and it was sort of like
that's the Scottish plague.
yeah, it's like what the what? But yeah, fun. I
Death
think-
by a unicorn catapult.
yeah, and so this is like 180 degrees separated from American Mary relative to its tone and its attitude. I
think it's a closer neighbor to Dr. Giggles.
Yeah, yeah. Although I think that for
Well, maybe
something
not.
that tried to be
Maybe
somewhat
not.
humorous, it was wry, but it was never. They didn't have jokes that landed.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Jeff,
Alrighty,
you're
my
number
next
2.
film. I probably broke the rules a little bit on this.
That's
but
okay.
But it is a doctor.
That's where the rules are
And,
meant to be broken.
You know, he is trying to help humanity. But let me set up the prologue to this. There's a young boy who watches his father go into a barn, so he follows him into the barn,
Okay.
watches his father make love to like a servant of the house. The father discovers him, hangs the kid up, starts whipping him.
Uh-oh.
So the kid's going to be pretty messed up, and he's going to grow up to be Dr. Jekyll.
Okay.
In 1989's Edge of Sanity,
Oh,
starring
wow.
Anthony Perkins.
Now that is a curveball.
And Anthony Perkins plays Dr. Henry Jekyll, who is working at a London hospital,
Okay.
trying to come up with a new anesthetic for surgery, and he's using cocaine for this.
Yes.
And of course, he starts testing it on himself, and he transforms himself into the perverse Mr. Hyde.
Okay.
And Mr. Hyde, of course, likes to head out at night and start slashing up prostitutes because he has a thing against,
It's a
women.
It's a Hyde thing.
And probably because his father beat him after watching, the act of coitus, I guess, or whatever. But yeah. So 1989's Edge of Sanity is a completely bizarre and wonderfully wicked movie.
Okay.
Released in '89, a couple years before Perkins unfortunately passed away. And at this point, Anthony Perkins was typecast as being Psycho, Nutsoid. That's pretty much, the majority of the roles he got,
Right.
unfortunately, after, playing Norman Bates in Psycho. But in this film, he just gives it his all. He's over the top. And this film kind of also touches on, the police, the Jack the Ripper
right.
thing. So
Right,
basically, they're saying that Hyde was, Jack the
So
Ripper
what is the
in this
time,
film.
the era in which this movie is set?
Late 1800s.
Okay.
But the interesting thing about this movie is, like some of the costumes and the way Hyde looks when he becomes Dr. Hyde is straight out of like 1985 punk clubs. Like he goes to because Hyde is very perverse. So part of his, when he becomes Mr. Hyde, he goes to sex clubs and things like that. And,
So it's
and
new
and-
wave punk, romantic, gothic.
so when Perkins becomes Mr. Hyde, he's not under any kind of prosthetics or they don't put false teeth or make him look weird. He basically looks like he got out of an 80s punk club. It's like he's all in black. They have like weird kind of makeup on him, and the lighting is very kind of Suspiria-like. There's a lot of like bright kind of day glow
Magentas.
lights
Yeah.
and stuff. But that's part of the charm of the movie because it's like very weird and timeless. And Perkins is like so great. He just sells it. He's like, okay, I'm doing this movie. I'm going to go balls out in this movie and just be as weird and over the top as I possibly can. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun, especially if you're a fan of Perkins. I love Anthony
And
Perkins.
so is it in classic Jekyll and Hyde fashion, is his cocaine concoction in a flask, and does he chug it or does he inject it?
I think he drinks it.
Or does he snort it?
I think he drinks it, from what I recollect. And of course, he has a very uptight wife,
Okay.
who is caught in the middle between, the very proper and well-respected Dr. Jekyll, but then Hyde is, patrolling the dark streets of London.
So when was the last time you saw the Frederick March, the 1938?
I saw that one probably 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was surprised at how well that film holds up.
Yeah, Frederick March won
He won
best actor,
only best actor to win for a horror film. So
unless you count Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs.
well, that was supporting actor.
No, Hopkins won best actor.
Best actor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though he's a supporting actor, he won best actor.
Okay.
That's
He was in it
that's
for
one thing
5
I was always
minutes.
like, what?
Yeah.
But but this film is it's a lot of fun. It's like, the time period is supposed to be late 1800s, but they just do a lot of kind of crazy stuff where some of the fashions, like when they go into the sex clubs, are very like 1980s, the way everybody looks and stuff. But
It's The Howling Part 2.
yeah, and I mean, it gets pretty perverse, and they have a lot of kind of tasteless, sexual murders in the film that might disturb some people.
Like The Howling 2.
Like The Howling
Ooh,
2,
Howling
yes.
2. I'm a big fan of Howling 2.
We were talking
Complete.
about that. I had to watch.
Did you watch it?
I did, and it was like, oh my god, this is so terrible and awesome at the same time.
The best thing about Howling 2 is the end credits. You get to see Sybil Danning whip her bodice off like 18 times in a row. I mean, that's basically the show. Like, we got this one shot, we're going to show it as many times as possible. And Christopher Lee in the Punk Club. I'm
Yes.
sure Christopher Lee was like,
What
it's
am
a good
I
thing
doing?
I'm getting a paycheck, because
Yeah.
what the hell am I
No,
doing in this
you
movie?
could tell
Christopher
he
Lee
was-
totally phoned it in.
You see when he's got those like 80s kind of very thin like glasses,
yeah,
and he's in the Punk Club.
Oh,
He
God.
was
my
he
God,
was
it's
pissed,
That-
pissed throughout.
that band in the. Well,
They were actually pretty good.
Okay, now here's the other thing that I noticed.
Yes.
When, in the throne room, and again, I know that we're killing time here, but when Sybil Danning's on the throne with her, like the cat suit with all the metal straps on it,
Right.
and there's a wolf. That's a stuffed wolf. It is. I was watching it. I was like, that wolf doesn't move. That is a non-blinking wolf, and it's like he's kind of cute. And it's like, all right, that's a cadaver wolf. So,
All right, we're moving on to the next film,
There you
which
go.
is a film known as Get Well Soon, also known as The Fright, also known as Visiting Hours.
Oh,
This is the Canadian slasher film directed by Jean-Claude Lord, starring, just a couple of people named Lee Grant, somebody named Michael Ironside, and somebody named
Bill Shatner.
Bill Shatner, yes. And somebody named Lenore Zahn. I don't know who Lenore Zahn is.
So who's our?
And,
Because our protagonist,
the protagonist is Lee Grant.
Oh, Lee Grant. Okay.
Yeah. The film, essentially, the plot focuses on a feminist. This is pre-woke America. Feminist journalist who becomes the target of a serial killer who follows her to the hospital after attacking her in her home. Michael Ironside, of course, plays the role of the super misogynistic, psychopathic serial
He's
killer named
fantastic in this.
Colt Hawker.
He is scary.
He
in
actually-
this movie.
he-
I mean, he's a scary guy no matter in like any
Right.
movie you ever see him in.
Yeah.
But in
When
this
he's
movie,
the good guy, he's scary.
He
but in this
really
movie,
is.
he's like there's something about him like you believe like this guy is insane.
yeah,
and
yeah.
intense, and that voice. Right?
Yeah,
And-
William Shatner super phoned it in, and
Paycheck.
you could tell because he's in an early scene when he doesn't believe Lee Grant, and he tells her basically, "You're being hysterical. You're delusional. There's no serial killer after you." And then fast forward, I don't know, 70 minutes. Bill Shatner shows up towards the end of the film when she's stuck in the hospital and the chase scene occurs, and then he believes her. But you could absolutely tell in 1982 that Bill Shatner was absolutely after the paycheck because he was not an integral part of
And yet
the film.
he was the lead on the title. He was the first one to
He
call sheet.
he was, yeah.
He had to film an episode of T.J. Hooker.
That's right.
It's only available.
Yeah, Mondays and Wednesdays every other week. Yeah.
TJ's paying my bills. Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. That Gene Siskel, he gave it a half a star.
Yeah.
Half a star out of 4. And he called it yet another depressing sickie with knife chasing women picture. And he said it was shocking and depressing. And he said that Lee Grant and William Shatner appeared in it asking, do these people really need a paycheck that badly?
Siskel was infamous for hating
Yeah.
Oh, he did not like
Ebert, on the other hand,
on a lot of. I remember the slasher genre. They hated that
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
genre.
Yeah,
well,
no, absolutely.
although I remember Roger Ebert really loving Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, and he had a soft spot for well-made exploitation movies, because he did like Valley of the Dolls or something like that when he was.
He wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote it. Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, because Mike, you and I saw this together, and as much as I love Michael Ironside in it,
We saw it like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was
Oh, God, you
Michael
could-
Ironside is really good, but yeah, the rest of the film it's kind of so. But it
you got some plot gaps you could drive an ambulance through. I mean, this thing's
Ba-dum-bum.
but a ding.
but a ding. All right, so what is your number 2?
Okay,
That was a good segue, by the way.
so my number 2 is a 2011 film, which sort of belongs in the horror or not, and if you stick with it, it is. But it plays with you for a while, and but this is a Pedro Almodovar film called "The Skin I Live In,"
Oh, right.
featuring the most handsome man on the planet,
Yeah.
Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
And Elena Anaya as a woman who he has is one of his patients who is staying at his mansion against her will, and that's a curious thing. He along with his housekeeper that they are working to try and make sure that she is healing from some surgeries, because he apparently has a reputation for being one of the best plastic surgeons in the world. His reputation is there have been 9 face transplant surgeries ever done, and he was present at 3 of them. And so now he's saying that I've developed this new kind of a skin that if you use pig cells, that all of a sudden it creates a tougher skin and whatnot. So he's a bit of a controversial figure, but he's very, very successful. There is also a side story where you realize there's a lot of tragedy in Dr. Ledgard's background. His wife was caught in had a horrible fiery car crash for which she had burns over most of her body. He tried to heal her, but when she saw the image of herself in the window, she freaked out and jumped out and killed herself out of a second-story window. His daughter was present at a wedding that they had jointly attended, and she got raped in sort of a date rape situation, for which she was kind of a fragile individual, pushed her over the edge. She ended up getting put into a mental hospital. She also jumps out a window and kills herself. So there are 2 stories that are sort of tracking side by side. And this is, at this point, it's like, well, it's kind of, drama, kind of a little bit of thriller kind of a thing. And then the 2 stories merge. And he is doing some extreme surgeries. And he goes out, what he does is he captures the young man who raped his daughter. And he goes to town on him. He chains him up in
Like Hostel go to town on him.
He uses all of his surgical skills to
Like American Mary.
Yes. And so this is, and like American Mary, this is, and it's an Almodovar film, and I don't know if you're familiar with his work. absolutely stunning look to this movie.
A great cinematography.
Great cinematography. It's also soaked in sex. This stuff is like tie me up, tie me down.
Right.
Woman on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He has built a reputation of doing very sexy
edgy.
films. And you put two gorgeous people like Elena Anaya and Antonio Banderas in the movie, and you got some chemistry. There is to. I'm going to encourage people to watch the movie, so I don't want to spoil the end.
Right.
Where the two plots merge is freaky.
Huh.
And you go, oh, aha, and you realize, and all the kinds of dirty secrets that he's keeping, and
How are the critics' reviews? I mean, obviously
it's hard to watch.
But I mean, they generally laud his work. But I mean,
it's got a Rotten Tomato of 66.
oh, that's pretty solid.
It's held up all right.
It's a D plus.
And he's, I think Almodovar has not been. I think his heyday was in the early '90s. And so it's actually kind of cool to see him back with some big time talent,
Right.
And pulling this kind of stuff off. I thought it was very, very interesting. It is
Is this one subtitled? No.
subtitled, yes.
It is, okay. It is. Yeah.
And never bored for a second. It was Jeff. Have you seen it yet?
I've seen it. I thought a good kind of like this is like a sister film to Audition.
Yes.
In the
wow.
fact that that last act, it kind of hits you like in the face with a baseball bat because you're kind of like going in one way and you're not quite sure where is this going, and when it does get to that point, you're like,
That is
holy shit.
that is a heavy duty comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Heavy
it's
duty.
not. I don't think it's quite as disturbing,
No.
or graphic
No,
as
but the-
Audition, but it is kind of come out with a that.
The mental connection that you go, oh my god, that this is where
Right.
these two stories converge.
Yeah.
Boffo.
All right. Let's get to Jeff's number
right.
one.
I've
Correct?
saved
Yes.
the best for last.
Well, that's
Okay.
the way, that's
Or
the
the
way it
worst
works
for
here on the
last.
Scariest Things podcast.
All right,
Always works that way.
my number one pick for medical malpractice
Okay.
is 1978's The Manitou,
Oh, wow.
directed by William Girdler.
Yeah.
Who was
Hell
most famous for
yeah.
kind of doing
Now you're
kind of
talking.
parody, or not parody, but kind of rip-offs of bigger. He did Abby,
Right.
Yes.
which is the blaxploitation version of The
Yes.
Exorcist. He
Right,
did.
which they're going to do for the Portland Horror Film Festival.
Oh yeah, they are doing.
Yeah.
They are showing that in May for sure.
Yeah.
And then he also did Grizzly,
Yes.
Yes.
which is kind of a rip-off of Jaws.
Yes.
But this is his most ambitious film,
Absolutely.
ambitious
And his
ripoff.
last, right?
and it is his last film.
Yeah.
But so let me run through the plot of this completely
Heck yeah.
insane movie. Basically, a woman discovers a small growth on her back. Her doctors are perplexed as to exactly what it is, and after it starts growing at a very incredible rate, the doctors kind of start doing tests and discover that it is made of flesh and bone, this growth. And they tell her, basically, you have a living fetus on your back. Okay.
Oh, that's so horrible.
Okay, so she calls her friend, who is a psychic and tarot card reader, played by the great Tony Curtis.
Oh, there. Okay.
They do a seance because he's into, tarot cards and being a psychic. And they are visited by a Native American spirit. And after some sleuthing, they discover that the fetus on her back is a Manitou, which is a spirit of an ancient Native American medicine man. Okay? They recruit
It's not bad enough to have that
John
growth on
Singing
your
Rock.
back.
John Singing Rock is a current medicine man living out in the country, on the plains or what have you. And they want to do an exorcism, basically, to get rid of this spirit. So John Singing Rock performs an exorcism, basically bringing the power of the winds and the mountains to exorcise this evil Manitou, to no avail. So they need to basically.
Is it Now,
So it takes place basically and it starts growing, and basically it's in the hospital. And the whole last half of the movie takes place in the hospital as John Singing Rock and Tony Curtis perform this cosmic exorcism. And basically, some of the highlights of this movie, you do actually have a birth scene where it's played by a small person, breaks out of this woman's back. And it is a Native American medicine man who's the incantation of evil, basically. And one of the other highlights of the movie is you have doctors when they start doing tests. At first, they're going to remove this growth on her back, but the spirit of the Manitou kind of overtakes the doctor, and he basically cuts his own wrists in the hospital operation room and dies. Basically, there's another scene where they're going to have they decide we're going to take this off with lasers. The machine goes crazy, but the craziest part of this movie is the whole exorcism scene at the end. John Singing Rock discovers, okay, everything has a spirit. Everything has a Manitou. Everything in the world, including the hospital computers. So he conjures the hospital computers to fight the evil.
Oh, no.
So you have this completely cosmic, bizarre, kind of Star Wars in themed climax with lasers and space and clouds and the devil and all this stuff, and it's completely
versus the little shaman.
Yeah. And it's completely insane, but completely awesome. This is like a textbook example
Right.
of a good bad movie.
Yes.
Because it's so bizarre that you just can't help but love this movie. You're like, how the hell did this get funded?
Well, it's Girdler. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Now
probably had a
we will not
lemonade
be doing
scent
a
sale.
we will not be doing a rape revenge podcast. We will, however, be doing a William Girdler podcast.
Yeah. Oh,
That
yeah.
is happening.
Yeah, this is
That
his
is
this is
happening.
his
Three and a meat
best
Yes,
this is
three-
his
three
best
on a meat
movie,
hook.
and it's so sad that he died in a tragic accident, because I would love to see what
It was
he
a plane
did.
crash, right?
It was, yeah.
And
he was scouting like his next film.
and he was like in his early 30s or something.
Yeah,
like
he
that.
was extremely. He's
yeah.
very prolific throughout the 70s.
right.
He did a lot of
yeah.
movies. The thing that's so upsetting is, like, he made this. I would love to see what his next movies would have been.
Oh my
because
god!
they're just
I
completely
can only imagine.
completely batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But this movie is like the text. I mean, I think the best thing to do is to get a group of friends, watch this movie together, because
Done.
you will just be howling and be like,
Yeah. Is it now?
Enjoying
Is it
the hell out of it.
self-conscious about where it's going?
no, it plays itself
straight.
dead serious.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't think it realizes how.
I think largely,
Insane it is.
whether it was Asylum of Satan or Three on a Meat Hook or Grizzly. I mean, I think they all played it pretty straight.
But
like
I think that
like it was not meant to be campy. They were like it was a very earnest presentation of whatever the subject matter
but the
was.
producers knew what they had in front of them.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
They-
Which was like super schlocky drive-in fare.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
I think that's part of the charm of it, is because I don't think the filmmakers quite knew what they were doing.
Yeah. No, that
But-
was it was a seat of the pants kind of a production.
Yeah, The Manitou, just recently released on Blu-ray too. Highly recommended.
All right. Mike's going to be on that one. I know it.
Oh no, I've seen the Manitou.
Okay.
I've seen all the William Girdler films.
All right.
Oh yeah, no,
So it's
I'm,
just
I'm
me.
definitely I'm all about that. Yeah, I am going to 1979 with the Canadian science fiction psychological horror film written and directed by the
Michael Crichton.
David Cronenberg.
Okay.
Starring Oliver Reed, which I told you we would get back to Oliver Reed. This, of course, is the New World Pictures film, The Brood.
It's one of
The-
my favorite Cronenberg films.
Yeah.
Yes.
this is-
Well, that's one of my favorite horror films of all time. This involves psychotherapist Hal Raglan, who is, of course, played by the great Oliver Reed, who runs the Soma Free Institute, where he performs a technique called psychoplasmics, encouraging patients with mental disturbances to let go of their suppressed emotions through physiological changes to their bodies. Speaking of growths on your back,
Oh, God.
this
Oh,
is
this is the
all growths on your back. One of the patients, Nora Carveth, a severely disturbed woman who is legally embattled with her husband Frank for custody of their 5-year-old daughter Candace, is under the care of Dr. Hal Raglan, who continues to kind of torture her with this weird psychotherapy, psychoplasmics, to the point where the psychoplasmics experiments manifest themselves in these strange little beings that come out of her body. And
Oh, and the yuckiest like embryonic sac thing.
well, yes,
Basically,
yeah.
her rage babies.
Oh,
they
God,
are her
yeah.
rage babies.
And they
yes,
turn into the things that scare Mike the most.
the little strange
Evil
dwarfy rage babies. Yes. Apparently, actress Samantha Egger, she conceived the idea at one point in the film. She is caught licking the fetuses, much like a cat.
Yes.
And she apparently conceived this. This was not something you would think this was a David Cronenberg special. It was not a David Cronenberg special. She apparently thought to herself that when, cats have kittens or dogs or puppies, all I think about is just that they lick themselves as soon as they're born. They lick, 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 Samantha Egger apparently said. And she, when that scene apparently was originally shot, it was censored because it was so disturbing.
It is really horrible.
The Canadian Film Board said, no, we cannot have a close-up of Samantha Egger licking a fetus. That's just too weird. Because apparently what they were thinking was that people would conflate her licking the fetus with actually eating the fetus. And David Cronenberg was like, no, we're not eating fetuses or licking fetuses. We don't need any of this. But Samantha Eggers was apparently very insistent upon the fetus licking in the Brood.
It's a nice little motherly touch.
It is.
It is.
No,
I
I figured that out. I mean, it's nurturing and horrific at the same time.
Oh yeah. And this film, man, it's got so many horrific elements. The score, the soundtrack is so creepy. The crazy, like, high pitched, plucky violin sounds. The sets, the design, the crazy dwarf-like rage babies that manifest out of her body. I mean, all of it is so strange, and it's all wound up in this kind of like, I don't even know how you would describe it per se, other than this really kind of fearful approach to psychotherapy, I guess you would say.
There you go with the psychotherapy again.
Yes, we're back to the psychotherapy again. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure like what David Cronenberg was thinking as he was developing the film, but there was definitely sort of this underpinning
He was
that
a very angry man.
yeah, well, apparently he did shoot the film when he was going through, I do know this, he did shoot it when he was going through a very contentious divorce, and he himself was in the process of fighting for custody for his daughter. So I know that part of it.
Did this help?
Yeah, I don't know if he was like going through psychotherapy at the time and he said, this is bullshit. And I'm going to write a film that specifically questions psychotherapy. I don't know if that was part of the play, but there was definitely that subtext to the film, and it certainly made it more horrifying. So what do you got?
So I'm stretching. I am taking advantage of the hospital as a horrifying location.
Yes.
This is a 2016 film. This is more body horror. This is cosmic horror.
Uh-oh.
The Void.
Oh,
yes.
Set 100% in a hospital.
Yeah, and this
100%.
is, yeah, this is the medical procedures aren't really the theme of the movie.
Nope.
But it takes place almost entirely in a rural community hospital that's working with a skeleton crew while the building is actually in the process of being remodeled.
Also Canadian.
Yes, another Canadian film, and it's being remodeled not just by normal people, but there is something fairly cosmic going on in the basement. There is a gate from another dimension, and from which horrible things are coming out of it, and they go full Prince of Darkness, Dusk Till Dawn, The Thing level, just unleashing physical mutating monsters. It's got a big cast that gets completely lunched in this movie. I think that it's got it. This is, sometimes you think, this is a hospital not as a place of healing. This is a place where you go when you're sick. And
Right.
I think that there's kind of this funny juxtaposition, for old school hospitals that or rundown asylums. That's like, this is where you go. This is where the people go who are in really bad shape, and they either go there to die, or it's just it has this sense of illness and malignancy to it. And I think you have the,
And that's
the,
before the cult arrives.
yeah. And so there's threats from without, where you have the hospital is surrounded. The cops are already there, and one
Right.
of them gets dispatched very early.
Oh, yeah.
In the proceedings, one of the nurses gets torn apart and starts mutating into a demon of some sort. It's got great pace to it. It's spooky as all hell. The acting chops in this thing are nothing great. But this
I'm going to disagree on that one.
you-
I think the acting chops are pretty solid.
I think that, but I think what you're going for,
Especially
here
the
is
main, the guy who plays the main law enforcement officer.
the deputy.
Yeah, the deputy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think-
he's pretty solid.
Yeah, Aaron Poole.
Aaron Poole,
He's
okay.
pretty good, but I think like the villain, he's a scenery chewer. He's very arch. You suspect that he's bad news the whole time. There's also a father-son combination who you don't trust initially, who you eventually have to come to trust. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. You get these
Right.
kinds of things, and hey, let's go to the basement and confront the evil. And we got split up. There's a number of really classic tropes excellently executed in this movie. And the practical effects, the return to in a digital age, and Jeff, you were referring to your love of monster movies. I think this is one of the great monster movies of recent vintage.
Yeah, I remember. I think that's the highlight of this movie.
Yeah.
Are the practical effects?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
Because
they're-
they went
they're
old
solid.
school. Because
Yeah,
they
oh,
really
yeah.
were kind of influenced by The Thing.
Yep.
And Hellraiser.
Yep.
So you could kind of tell this is where their inspiration was coming from, and they
absolutely.
wanted to make an kind of 80s style practical effects monster movie.
and you get the dimensional gate at the end, and the cultists are arriving. There's not a lot of exposition, so you kind of get why this is happening, but you just kind of it gets a little overwhelmed by how nasty the creatures are, and I think that the character is not behaving completely logically about stick together. I mean, there are reasons why there's like a pregnant woman where it's like, I got to stay here and stay with her. You go get the medicine, and good luck. But for those of you who like a hard R monster flick and some surgical horror kind of on the side,
This is solid.
the Void.
Solid.
Check
And
it
the
out.
director, the gentleman, there was two directors, but one of the people that directed The Void also is done the new Leprechaun movie.
I don't know if that's a
Leprechaun Returns.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? We'll have have you seen the new Leprechaun?
I have not, but we will check back with you on that one.
I think there's
Save
somebody
that-
I know that we've
save that for the, next March.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, I think we passed our opportunity.
Irish
St.
horror.
Patty's Day.
So you can do the whole retrospective on the whole series. Eight
Yeah,
films.
I know that our friend Amy is
Is she big into the Leprechaun?
well. What she does is she binges franchises, and so
Oh.
at some point, I think that she's got Leprechauns on the table. I think she's gonna try the Puppet Master series, and she's got to go 14 deep to do that one.
That's right.
But she does it every Halloween or something like that. It's like, oh, that's a haul.
that is a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
That is a whole lot of work. We'll get back to you on the Leprechaun.
So, so this has been a fantastic episode.
Yes.
ran long. We kind of knew we were going to be, because we have our super special guest Jeff with us today. So
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys.
Of course.
we'll have to do this again. I think this is I like the 3-person format. I think
It works very nicely. It's
it-
less research for us.
Yeah, it tends to run long. I collided actually both times with Jeff today.
That's right.
I know we collided on American Mary, and then the last episode we collided on.
I think it was. Oh no, I collided with Mike in the last one. Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay,
right.
yeah, that's
right.
I was going to say, you almost never collide with me, but you
Yeah,
did.
because I normally avoid Mike. I thought Mike was going to go more Grindhouse, and he went actually Art House with Let's Scare Jessica to Death.
There you go.
So I think we're going to bypass on our
Yes.
grave digging efforts for this session because we're running long.
We grave digged into werewolves and
That's right.
off-topic things.
That's right. That's
So-
right. I will take us out with the tagline from the 1979 film The Brood. They're waiting for you.
I've got a grave digging one or not a grave digging, a tagline though that I have to do.
Yes. It's better than The Brood?
Dr. Phibes has great vibes.